It's a very good day for motor racing. Whose mantra was that? One of the great Formula One racers of all time, next on Adventurer. Clash, James Clash. Welcome to Adventurer, the show with guests who truly push their lives to the limits. No talking heads here, just the real deals. I'm your host, Jim Clash. Sir Jackie Stewart knows a thing or two about auto racing. He not only won 3 Formula One World Driving Championships, but for many years was the exciting voice behind the Indianapolis 500. Welcome, Sir Jackie. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Last time you were here, we were talking about Champ Car and the Indy Racing League, and they had been feuding for many, many years, and we didn't see an end to that. This year, miraculously, they've gotten back together. We just had the Indy 500. It's a whole open wheel league now. What do you think? Can we take on NASCAR? Can the open wheel racing take on NASCAR now, or what's in store this year?
I think it's a tragedy that it lasted as many years as it did, because the battle allowed NASCAR to take a bigger bite of the marketplace than they could have otherwise enjoyed. But having said that, they've delivered. They've done very well. NASCAR's been very professional and have put on a great show. And of course, it's much watched around the world today, not just in domestic America. It hasn't culturally come around for the rest of the world quite as much as you would expect it to do because it's so big in America. But single-seaters are still the purity of motor racing in its highest level. Formula One Grand Prix racing is the sort of epitome of it. But I think whether it's an oval or road courses that are now being run with IRL and Champ Car coming together is going to give it a second breath. But I think it'll take a while for it to come back, because it takes a while to woo the sponsors, to woo the television companies. But at the end of the day, it's going to be tough for them to be competitive in the big sense to NASCAR, because it's just had such a good head start.
Back when you drove, and I didn't realize this, you drove in 2 Indianapolis 500s. You almost won it in 1966. You had a 2-lap lead with 8 laps to go, I think, yeah. and you had an engine problem. And then the second year, you came back, and again, you had the same problem. Tell us what it was like to be leading by 2 laps and to have that problem so close to the end of the race.
Well, particularly as a rookie, to go there for my very first time and to be finding myself at lap 192, because it's 200 laps of the 2.5-mile oval at Indianapolis, and 3 Brits, 2 Scots, first, second and third we were. Graham Hill and Jim Clark was there. And Graham went on, my own teammate in Formula One at that time, went on to win because I had a scavenge pump in the engine C's, and I can't remember the name of the engine, but I think it began with F, and it might have been 4 letters.
Ooh, and you worked with that company for many years.
40 years. But it was just one of those things. And then the following year, by the way, that year, 66, I won the Rookie of the Year, which was a kind of bonus, if you like,
even though you didn't finish the race, and no one's ever won Rookie of the Year since not finishing the race.
Well, maybe I don't know that, but
no, it's true.
I know that I got into, there was another pace setters club, because when you led the race for so many laps, you became one of the pace setters, and I've still got the leather jacket to go with it. But I still finished 6th because I had been 2 laps in the lead. So I walked back, pushed the car back for a long way, thinking I had to cross the finishing line. But in the end, big disappointment. One of my biggest disappointments in all my career. Just to win the Indy 500 would have been a nice thing to do. But I came back the following year, was lying in 2nd place, in fact ahead of AJ, AJ Foyt went on to win it that year. When again, the same component area, an oil scavenge pump seized up. And disappointment again, but I never went back after that. I got into Formula One very heavily, and I thought I had to sort of focus on that.
Back in 1982, you were announcing, was qualifying for Indy, and Gordon Smiley was on, I think, his 1st or 2nd lap, and had a very, very horrific accident. I think it was in turn 2. And how do you, as an announcer, how do you deal with something like that? You pretty much knew the guy had died when you saw the...
Well, that I think is the most difficult thing as a commentator, to be faced with, because I was lucky. I was working with fantastically skilled commentators. I learned anything that I ever learned about commentating from the great Jim McKay, who was the host of Wide World of Sports, and lots of other good ones that went with him. And when you see an impact, maybe as a racing driver it's a little easier because you know the gravity of the accident. You actually sometimes have felt it, and you've become this close to that death, and life is very easily taken in these speeds. And when I saw it, it was a question of how long the cameras were going to be left on the picture of what do you say? Is it time to be silent? Or is it time to say, you know, where there's life, there's hope, but you don't know whether there's life at that time because the impact is so big when you hit a concrete wall. You don't know if the driver's just been rendered unconscious, whether his seat belts and his protective mechanism that the car has within it, and that survival cell, which it was developing at that time, was able to contain the accident with the hope that life was being retained. In that particular case, it wasn't, and it was a difficult one to deal with.
Thank you again for coming by, Jackie. It's always a pleasure.
My pleasure. Thank you for Forbes having me.
Okay. Again, the great Scotsman, Sir Jackie Stewart. I'm Forbes adventurer Jim Clash. To read my column, pick up Forbes magazine or click on Forbes.com/adventurer. And thanks for watching the Forbes.com video network. Clash, James Clash.